So, cheers, mamas.
Cheers.
Yay!
Okay, do you guys get the text?
Yes.
Yes, I just got it. Yep. Perfect.
All right. You want to kick us off, Ashley, since you
Sure.
technically brought us together here?
Okay, so welcome to the Love That Journey Mama podcast. I'm Ashley. We have Nicole and Sam here, and this is just our intro podcast. We're kind of figuring things out along the way, but hopefully after this one you'll feel like you know a little bit about us and what our intentions are with this podcast. So, cheers, mamas.
Cheers.
Yay!
Okay, so yeah, my name is Ashley. I am 33 years old. I can't believe it, getting into the mid 30s already. And I am a new mom. I have an 7.5-month-year-old daughter. So I guess still a new mom. Everything is new to me each day. Married to my husband, Brian. We've been married for over 5 years. And yeah, we are just figuring out new parenthood life. It was great for us having a summer baby and kind of getting to be outside a lot in those early sleep deprived days and get a lot of sunshine. So now we're kind of in those, dreary days and figuring out how to continue this whole new parenthood life. While stuck indoors. So those of you who parented through the pandemic, I don't know how it sounds. I can't imagine because getting outside.
Those were dark moments.
Yeah, it like literally dark. Yeah. But yeah, I have had a lot of interest ever since the journey trying to conceive, the struggles there, and then postpartum. Had a lot of interest in connecting with people on the hard topics. I couldn't have imagined until trying to get pregnant what a mind game it can be. It's not even like I had as long of a struggle as I know other people can have, but once you're in it, it just feels like the longest journey of your life. A little just background there. Trying to conceive for about 6 months or so when I experienced an early miscarriage. So that is definitely something that love to talk about more and connect with other moms on. And that was actually something that I connected with Nicole on because we haven't seen each other since undergrad. But I knew I could reach out to you because you were willing to share about your experiences with early miscarriage. So that's where I kind of started to see, it's really valuable that people are willing to share about their struggles, so that I knew I could have someone to connect with when I was struggling to process everything. After that sent me on the whole infertility journey of trying to figure out what's wrong, why I had the miscarriage. And long story short, which we'll definitely get into more, we had our daughter Hadley through IVF. So yes, that is something that is a whole journey in itself of doctor visits and lots of medications and shots and all sorts of things. But we got a very happy, healthy daughter out of it. So we couldn't be happier with that. And then another part of our journey so far has been just an unexpected birth. So we had a really traumatic birth experience that involved a failed vacuum assisted delivery that led to an emergency C-section and spending a lot of extra time in the hospital. So I think realize you might think in your head how you wish things will go once you get pregnant and have your baby, and then you realize, yeah, nothing goes the way you plan, but it turns
That's
out
an
okay.
ongoing theme in motherhood of
Yeah,
not
for the
knowing
rest
anything
of
going. How you think it's gonna go?
Like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, you just realize, okay, nothing's gonna go the way it's planned, and like finding ways to accept that.
Mhm.
And I think, being able to talk with other girls about it is just so helpful. And speaking of being on the other side of having a baby, that's also when I had reached out to Sam, because of the traumatic birth and just being hit with a wave of like postpartum, sleep deprivation, confusion, struggles with nursing. Like, um, I just found myself connecting with both of these girls who I either haven't seen in ages, or we don't necessarily run in the same circles regularly, but we were connected through these experiences. And I think that's what hopefully this podcast will be all about, is that community between mothers, near and far. So that's a little bit of my story and why I'm here. But there are some more stories to be heard.
There's so many, right? It never ends.
Yes. Oh, and I guess I forgot to mention that before becoming a mom, I am a teacher. Right now, I'm stepping back to be a stay-at-home mom for the unforeseeable future. We'll see. So that's another area I'd love to talk about, stay-at-home mom life, figuring that out.
Yeah.
So you've got that on me and Nicole, because I don't know what that's like.
I did it for 3 years.
Okay.
We're gonna have to because I was a stay-at-home mom just for maternity leave, and I was counting down the days.
It is.
It's interesting.
I'm like, not cut out for it.
I thought my whole life, I'm like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, that's my dream. I'm going to have all these kids. I'm going to stay home. And then when I was doing it, I'm like, this is not my dream. Maybe this is not my dream. It's like smacks you in the face. Everything you thought you knew about yourself is not what you knew about yourself.
Yes, I 100% agree. Or like what you think in those first few months postpartum, like when I look back, I'm like, whoa, like I was so, I'm kind of going on the other route of like, I was so sure that I need to at least work part-time or something to balance myself out. And like now that I'm out of that like newborn haze, I'm like, oh, I think I'm okay with this life, but I'm not sure, because like everyone else I know that has little kids works, so I'm like, I don't know what I feel right now.
Well, but that's the thing, you can't compare yourself to others. It's whatever feels right for you.
Yeah.
And you won't know that until, like you're doing that right now. And then if it feels good, then you're doing the right thing. So
yeah, I'm like, this works for me right now. But I definitely told my therapist, I'm like, how am I going to feel when she wants to do way more than just like sit up and play with toys?
Very good point.
So maybe
I was able to work from home with Julian until he was about 18 months. And then I was like, this is too much. You got to go. So
I think that's another part of like motherhood that people don't talk about, is the underlying comparison that we do, even though we might like not admit it out loud, but we're always like, oh, well, this mom is doing this, or people with that age are doing this, so should I be doing that? Like, I remember I had such a hard time breastfeeding, and everybody around me was breastfeeding, and I was like, I can't do it. It's not working for me. And I felt so guilty because I was looking at everybody else. It's like, okay, just take everybody else out of the picture. What is best for you? But it's so hard. I don't know.
I can probably do a whole podcast episode just on my struggle with not being able to breastfeed, and I went to exclusively pumping because I was like, yes, what's best for the baby, and it was just wrecking me. So the guilt and the like, I should be able to feed my baby and I couldn't, and it was just
the shame and
and the guilt. God, the never-ending mom guilt. That's just
that's a whole other.
Yeah.
Well, and now I'm feeling like this opposite pressure because like in those early days I was so like gung-ho on, she's going to be both like breastfed and bottle fed for the flexibility and all that, and shared middle of the night feedings and all that. And came to 3 months, and that's when the bottle refusal started.
Oh no.
And I fought it so hard for like 2 months until it's finally like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've accepted it. And now it's like, I'm on an exclusively breastfeeding journey. I never thought I'd be on, I didn't even know if I wanted to nurse like before becoming a mom. But now I find almost the pressure of like, oh, like you should really like be trying bottles so that you can, have a night out or things like that. And I'm like, I just became okay with this this lifestyle, and I don't need it to change at the moment. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you guys. There's just pressure no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah.
No matter what. Everybody's got an opinion, and it's like you want to create this bubble. Like,
keep what's best for you. Yeah. You know what's best for you, and you know what's best for your kids, and that's like how it should be. But you're always gonna get people's 2 cents. So
yeah, and you can get so caught up in it, and I'm like, wait, why am I gonna push for something that I don't even really want anymore? So that like once in a blue moon, I can like go out for the night.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's a whole other topic that bothers me too, is the amount of people who are like, oh, because I had postpartum anxiety, which I guess I should probably do my introduction so I can talk about this. But my postpartum anxiety, I had really, really bad. I have general anxiety to begin with, and then I had really bad postpartum anxiety after Julian was born. And the amount of people who were like, you need to get a babysitter and go out, or leave him with family. You just need to get out. You just need to get out. You just need to get out. And I know people mean well by that, but like, that was the last thing I wanted to do for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I know people mean well, but it's one of those things where when you're constantly hearing it, and that's like the opposite thing of what you want to do. And it's like, I don't want to, like, I just want to be home with my baby right now. And like, and people can't like accept that because they're just like, you got to go out and be your own person. And I'm like, yeah, but this is the phase I'm in right now. And if I want to be home with my baby, then just like, let me be home with my baby and be okay with that. So
yeah. I agree. I feel like, and this is no shade at all to our parents, but I feel like their generation is more of like that tough attitude. Like, you gotta get up, you gotta get at it. Like, we did it, so you have to do it. And it's just a different time, and we're just so much more aware of emotions and what we need. So their attitude of, because my mom was the same way with my anxiety. It was like,
you got to get out there. You got to go out for a date night. And I'm like, I don't want to leave my baby with anybody. So
I know. Yeah. So
it's hard.
We're just at a different level with how we express our emotions and how aware we are. So
I feel like we could do a whole podcast episode on that too. Just like the generational difference between us and our mothers, and kind of like just the millennial generation in general, and how we're like more aware of like the emotional side of parenting.
Or how you don't know until you know. Like, there are so many things I think I was judging in my head until I'm like,
oh God,
people that
when I'm a mom, I'm never gonna do that. Okay.
Or I'm like, how could they never, like, people I've known where the only people they would let babysit their kids was like a grandparent or something, and I'm like, what? They don't trust a babysitter. I'm like, I don't know if I could see myself like doing that, like a random person coming to watch my kid, like, or nap schedules. Like, I used to think like, just like
just let her stay up, she'll be fine.
And now I live and die by a nap schedule because I'm like, that's when I get my break.
Oh gosh. All right. Before we keep going, because this is going really well, I just want to give my quick introduction and then go right to Nicole's introduction, and then we can at least get that part done.
Yeah.
That's the goal of today's episode, right? I'm Sam. I am 35. So Ashley over there saying you feel old. I just
old lady 35. Over here.
Old lady. So I am married to my husband, Eric. We've been married almost 4 years, and we have 2 little boys. My first is Julian. Found out I was pregnant in January of 2020, and then the whole world shut down like a month later. So that was fun. My first pregnancy was in complete isolation. Eric couldn't come to any of the appointments with me, and it was a very emotional, weird journey to be like pregnant for the first time and feel so alone. Like we couldn't even see family. Like that was like when everyone was like, stay away. And, you know, I didn't even go to the grocery store. Like Eric would go grocery shopping for me because with me being pregnant, he was worried. And it was like, I literally didn't leave the house. And it was, I think that kind of like was like the prereq for my postpartum anxiety.
For sure.
Because I was like in such a weird mental state to begin with. But he was born September of 2020. And then a few months later, well, not a few months, like 6 months later, unintentionally got pregnant again, which surprise! Ended up, yeah, surprise. That ended up a miscarriage. When I went in for an ultrasound at 12 weeks, they couldn't find the heartbeat. But my body wasn't rejecting it. So I had to go in for a D&C, which that was a whole mind grew up as well. And I could go into it more when we do have our miscarriage conversation, but like there was a lot of guilt because I had initially, because it wasn't a planned pregnancy, my initial feeling was like, I didn't want the baby, but then I grew to kind of accept it and we were making it work so that when I had the miscarriage, I felt like I didn't deserve to be upset. You know what I mean? Like I felt like there's moms out there who are losing babies they wanted. And here I am losing a baby that was an accident. And like, I don't deserve to feel sad. Like I like wasn't allowing myself to grieve, which was again just a very big mental health struggle. I've been just a mental health struggle mess since being pregnant.
Girl, me too. Wait till you hear my
right?
mess.
Oh, since are we all
pregnancy?
A mess.
But that kind of got the ball rolling on baby number 2, right? So August of 2021, I had my D&C. And that's when we seriously started talking about, it was like a month out from Julian's first birthday. And we were like, hey, do we want to have another kid? Because we were kind of getting excited about having 2 so close in age. So we were like, maybe we should do this. And lo and behold, got pregnant November. So what, 3 months later? 3 months later. And that ended up being a healthy pregnancy. But I was, of course, a nervous wreck the entire time because I think once you've experienced loss, you can't allow yourself to get excited. It's really weird. With Julian, like he was my first pregnancy and it was just like first time being pregnant, healthy pregnancy, no issue. So when I was pregnant with Jamie, every week, I didn't allow myself to even like picture the future until I was like 30 weeks. And I know people even experience late term loss. And so it's like, is that even like, there's no real safe time, right? So yeah, that was literally until he was born. Like it didn't really like click that I was having another baby. So yeah, I had 2 under 2 because Jamie was born in August of 2022. So 2 little boys, and they're now Julian's he's almost 2.5, and Jamie is almost 6 months. So. Yay. And here we are. And then I guess my reason for coming to this podcast is Ashley invited me. It's the same thing. I feel like I was very open with posting on Facebook about just like my struggles with postpartum health, postpartum like body image. Julian had a gross motor delay, a speech delay. There was a lot of things that I was worried about with him developmentally. And I would post about it. And I had so many people who I hadn't spoken to in years, like people I went to high school with who it's been, 15, 20 years since I spoke to them. And they reached out to me privately being like, thank you for posting that. Like it makes me feel less alone. And that's kind of what made me feel like, why is this such a secret taboo thing? Like if more than a small percentage of us are going through the same struggles, we should talk about it. So I'm glad we're doing this because I'm hoping that it can be a place of solace for a lot of moms.
Yeah, I really like how you worded that and how it's like, why is it this private thing or where like, you've got people you haven't spoken to in ages reaching out. Like I remember aside from Nicole, I reached out to a friend's friend that I had met once.
Yeah.
But because I knew she was a physician's assistant, I wanted like medical advice. And I'm like, I'll talk to anybody because
you're just grasping at anybody
right.
who can relate to you, which is so sad that not like out there for everybody to access.
Yeah, at all these different stages, like, or just even people struggling to get pregnant, and there's nothing wrong, but just like to be able to talk to somebody about that daily or monthly struggle and getting the negative result and all of that. It's like you just find yourself alone on this sad island.
And that's the thing, we shouldn't be alone because so many people are feeling the same thing. So it's like, I don't know.
It's that, that old school thinking of like, don't tell anyone until you're 12 weeks, and just hush hush. And I mean, I always told people right away, because if something happens, you need support and you need people.
And it did when I had my miscarriage. I remember because my husband being like, you're not supposed to tell anybody yet. Because I had told my closest girlfriends and my sister. And I was like, if I do have a miscarriage, they're like, I want to be able to have those people to rely on. And sure enough, when I had the miscarriage and I had to tell her, it's a little weird having to be like, hey, it didn't work out. Like, it's like, there's no like script for it. So, but it was nice because then you have that community of people, which like, if I hadn't said anything in the first place, it was like, hey, I was pregnant, didn't tell anybody, but I lost the baby. So now I'm upset about it. And people
they're like, oh,
yeah. Well, and that's what I know. I'm sure, Nicole, you can really relate on too with like an early miscarriage. It's all at once. It's like you suddenly know you're pregnant and then you suddenly know you're not. And like, I just remember it being so heartbreaking, like to have to tell my mom both in like the same conversation. Like a few days ago, I thought I was pregnant, but I'm having a miscarriage. Like too much at once, and
it messes with your mind. It really does. I guess I'll do my intro, right? Okay.
Do.
I'm Nicole. I have I'm 33 with Ashley. We went to college together.
We almost have the same birthday.
I know, a week apart. I was a teacher. I left teaching. I say forever, but who knows? I might go back. That's a whole other thing. I have 2 daughters, 7 and 5. So I experienced an ectopic pregnancy 8 years ago, and that was so traumatic, just obviously losing the baby in itself. But my story is so complicated. I have had severe endometriosis. So in college, I lost one of my ovaries and my fallopian tube. So I only had one left. And when I got pregnant, the baby was stuck in my only good fallopian tube. So, and I was hemorrhaging. It was an emergency surgery. Like I was like going to die. And I remember the OB surgeon coming in and she was like, you need to sign this because you might lose your ovary and fallopian tube. So you might lose the opportunity to ever have your own biological children. And it's like, on top of knowing that you're losing your baby, then thinking of like, there was no time to do IVF. There was no time to like freeze your eggs. So it's like, oh, okay, great. Now I could possibly lose the chance to ever have my own children. Thankfully, she saved everything. She was amazing. She saved it and it was great. We did have to go down the IVF route because we didn't want that to happen again. IVF didn't work for me. It created cysts. I needed surgery. That was a whole mess. And then I ended up getting pregnant naturally. So I got pregnant both times naturally. I also had them really close. So I had 2 under 2. They're like 15 months apart. Such chaos. But I experienced such bad postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and I didn't know what it was, because when they give you those questionnaires, when you go back for like your 6 weeks,
don't like filling those out.
Right?
And they're like, do you want to harm your baby? I was like, no, but I also am pretty sure I have postpartum depression.
Yes.
Like, should I, Mark? Yes, no.
I know. It's like this so extreme. So then they don't flag you as having it, but you have it. It's That was such a mind. Oh, it was so bad. Actually, it was so bad after Lucia, my youngest, that I actually considered like checking myself into a mental hospital because I was like, you can't get help. Like I was talking to my OBs, like this is what I'm experiencing, but then they'd screen you and they're like, you're okay, everything's fine. So I ended up finding a therapist that was amazing for me, and we worked through it. Yeah. And then actually, when Lucia was 3 months old, that one ovary I had left, it went into torsion. So it was twisting. And I had an emergency hysterectomy, which still makes me like cry to this day because I wanted a huge family. I wanted like 4 or 5 kids. And, that was taken away from me without like any notice. So, and they took the ovary too. So I can't freeze eggs or do anything like that. And then on top of it, they nicked an artery during surgery. They didn't know. I was like bleeding out and we had no idea. And then I was sent to the ICU and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and it was a mess. So I have so much trauma related to like miscarriage, birth, after birth. It's just been a wild ride. And I'm just so thankful to just have my girls and my husband and the support that I have. But yeah, Ashley and I connected because I had posted about my ectopic pregnancy 8 years ago. And if you think about it, like 8 years ago, people weren't talking about this kind of stuff like they are now. Yeah. I remember my mentor teacher, Ashley, like we all have like one mentor teacher. Mm-hmm. She called me and she was like, that is embarrassing. You need to take that down. Everybody struggles. Oh. And I was so upset and I didn't take it down. I was like, no, people don't talk about this. I am Googling looking for somebody to talk to about something like this and I can't find anything. And I got dozens of messages from women, dozens. So I'm glad that we've come farther than 8 years ago, but we still have a ways to go. But I'm just glad like we're putting it out there and we're talking about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because, so yours was 8 years ago and then mine was only just a couple of years ago. Yeah. It's like that's how long I held on to it, that I remembered your posts and I remember thinking like, oh, like I've never seen anybody on my social media like share about this before. And that's why it stuck with me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm sure I could look back in our messages and I'm just like this emotional mess, but there was no judgment and anything coming from you because you knew exactly how I was feeling. Yeah. So I think and that really opened up my eyes to like, there are so many topics that people need to be talking about more, or when I ended up on the IVF route, like, thank goodness there were two of my girlfriends that had been through it so that I could question them about everything, because there's just only so much YouTube can teach you. It's like knowing somebody or being able to talk about it one-on-one. It's just so much more helpful. So I'm like, there's just, we girls need to get out there and like start the conversations, but like we've talked about, in a sort of comfortable, cozy manner, where it's like you can learn from other people's stories, share your own, and not feel judged or worried that it's like too taboo of a topic.
I agree. I think there's so much healing and power to just be able to share your story. Just like sit down and share your story with somebody else. Because I think a lot of times as moms, even as women, even if you're not a mom, we just keep all those stories inside. So just being able to like verbalize it out loud is so powerful.
Yeah. It's like therapy, but free.
Yes, exactly.
Something you said too that was resonating with me about like not even knowing what you were experiencing with postpartum. Yeah. Or like what it truly was. And like, I feel so fortunate that in the hospital, the therapy services came around and like reached out to me. But I think it was only because I had the traumatic birth. I don't know if they would have come around and like offered services or knowledge of services if that hadn't happened, which I think is like very sad because even the smoothest of births can still need processing time or postpartum support. And and now because of that, I got set up with a therapist, and I'm like, why wasn't I doing this sooner? I never thought, I was like, I don't need therapy. And now I'm like, this is a game changer, like being able to talk about these things. And I was just recently asking her, I'm like, was I more depressed those first few months than I knew? So it's like so hard to define postpartum depression and anxiety since it looks different in everybody. And we kind of talked it out, and I've like realized and started to accept. I'm like, yeah, I definitely was some variety of depressed those first few months. Like the things I fretted about, thought was so like doomsday, and now that I'm like more clear, I'm like, oh yeah, that was that, and thank goodness someone was there to help me through it.
Yeah. I remember my first therapy session. I was like, maybe like 6 months postpartum with Julian. And I knew I had anxiety because I've always had anxiety. And I assumed it ramped up like with postpartum. And she, like our very first session, she was like, oh yeah, I'm diagnosing you with postpartum depression. And in my head, I was like, what? I was like, I'm not, to me, postpartum depression was like, oh, you want to like, hurt yourself or hurt your baby in some capacity. And she was like, no, there's so many more nuanced things to it. And that opened my eyes because I always like, that's like what the media portrays as postpartum depression. Like, oh, the mom wants nothing to do with her baby because she's just like a shell of her former self and depressed. And I was like, I don't think I feel that way, like as far as I knew. But she was like, no, there's like a lot more to it. And actually, I was talking to Ashley about this already with my, again, I didn't consider this postpartum depression, but apparently it's a big sign of it. With my second one, when he was born, I did not feel that initial attachment to him, where when my first was born, it was like that, like he came out of me and I was like immediately attached, bonded, like in love, want to protect you, like mama bear mode. And when my second was born, for easily 2 to 3 months, it felt like I was like babysitting another kid. And it was weird because like mentally I knew, I'm like, this is my baby, but it felt like I was just taking care of him temporarily and then someone else is going to like take him. So I like, there was no like bond. Like it wasn't that like mother baby bond. It was more of just like a caregiver. And that's apparently postpartum depression too. So there's just so much more to it that I didn't know at the beginning of my motherhood journey. So
I always wish there were, they do like the Lamaze classes and like all of that stuff. But I always wish there was like courses on the real, and I guess that's what we're doing here, but like a course on what the real motherhood is like, like your birth is not going to be like la la la, like rainbows and listening to your playlist. I mean, maybe some births are, but it's so different. And then afterwards is different. And I just find myself like when I talk to my friend who's also a mom, I'm like, why didn't anyone tell us this? Why didn't anyone tell us this? Where is this information? Like,
it's like what I said earlier, here's your motherhood, your welcome to motherhood handbook.
Yes. And like the real nitty gritty, not like this is how you change a diaper. It's like, you're probably going to tear when you give birth. You're going to have stitches. It's going to be painful.
You're going to cry all day, every day for months.
The milk doesn't come in for a few days. Yeah. It hurt. Like, there's just so many little things. Yeah. Like, oh my God, we need to write our own book.
Or you mentioned with the diaper, like my husband and I'll joke where it's like, we had in our minds that like changing diapers would be like one of the biggest pains of like having children. And it's like, that's the easiest part.
Well, wait till they're toddlers, because trying to change Julian's diaper is like a wild animal. So it does get more difficult.
Yeah. And potty training is like the bane of my parenthood existence. I couldn't stand it.
Oh,
I have
wow.
friends who loved it and like, oh my gosh, somebody please potty train my kids. They're
I'm
both
putting it
so
off as long as
stubborn.
possible.
I did too. I waited till they were 3. I'm like, I don't care.
I have no desire to rush it. I'm like, because then it's like, changing diapers right now I'm fine with. I don't want to do the whole like, do you got to go potty? Do you need to use the potty? Or like anytime we're out of the house, like trying to clock the nearest bathroom for like emergencies. I'm like, I don't want that extra stress. Like you can just go to diaper as long as possible.
The bane of my existence. I'll help you. I'll guide you.
Guys, I'm going to need the tips because I just don't
Some kids are really easy though. Like Lucia was pretty easy. She's my youngest. Lena, no. Nope. Wanted nothing to do with it.
I just noticed both your girls have L names, right?
Lena's Madalena, but we call her Lena. So yeah, they're both very.
We're 2 J names, so I didn't know if it was like a theme. Ashley, that means if you ever have another kid, you need another H baby.
I guess, but I already know.
She's got it.
Yeah, we should like talk maybe in one of our little future mini segments talk about like how we landed on our names, and
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would like that.
Just because it's always fun to know, or talk about like, have you dealt with any judgment for the names you chose?
Oh my gosh, I know. You know what? I love hearing everybody's birth stories, even if they're like traumatic or awful. It's something that is so fascinating to me because there are no two that are alike. They're all completely different. And
Ashley and I had some similarities though, because I remember that was one of the things we first connected about was their unplanned emergency C-section. So and I feel like, should we make that our next episode? Should we all do our birth stories?
That would be, because mine were fast. Like they call it, what is it, precipital? I think that's the word, precipital, where that's traumatic in itself, where it's too fast for you to even process what's going on. Normally it's like 24 hours, it's your first, it's slow. I went into labor and gave birth with both of them within 4 hours. So there was no time for you to like process what I had. No time. I'm like, what's happening?
That was my second one. My second one, Jamie, my water broke, and an hour and 20 minutes later, he was in my arms.
Oh wow. That's like my mom. I was almost born in the car.
Yeah. I was on an elevator, baby. Like when she was taking me up the elevator in the wheelchair, I was like pinching my legs shut. I was like, no.
Stay in there. We were an hour from our hospital, and Matt, he's a firefighter. He was on shift. And I was like, I'm home alone. I'm in labor. We're an hour away. Like, oh my gosh. It was a disaster.
Oh
I'm excited to hear though. So like let's do that. Let's do next episode.
Yes.
We'll go through our birth stories. So I think that'll be a really fun episode.
That'll be great.
I think that'll be awesome. And just for anybody out there listening, to kind of I hope you guys have an idea of how we plan to engage and share with one another. Like all 3 of us have so much more to say about everything we've been through. This is like a little taste. But we're also hoping to involve other moms and their stories too. So hopefully after we share a few more times and like kind of get an idea of our groove here, we can expand a bit. But yeah, it looks like we're headed into birth stories next. And we're just gonna jump all over the place, birth stories, miscarriage, postpartum, breastfeeding,
anxiety,
wherever the wind takes us.
It's a judgment-free zone. So
I so appreciate the 2 of you, and Ashley, I'm so grateful that you invited me to do this, because I think this is going to be so much fun for us, and also just super healing in a way. I feel like we're probably still all harboring just a lot of trauma, and I feel like as we kind of talk through our stories and journeys, that I'm hoping it'll be healing for not only us but for other moms who are listening. So
yes,
I'm excited.
It feels so good to sit in this vibe of we've all had different experiences, but there's just this thing uniting us of just knowing how it feels. Because I don't know about you guys. I'm like, I remember the first time I went out, like, you know, postpartum to hang with some friends for a bit. None of them have had kids. And I just felt like I was sitting there like, okay, like I have this whole life now.
Yes.
And, but none of them know how it feels. So, like, that's why they're not really asking me about it, because they don't know what that life is like.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh gosh, like I have so much to say, but it wouldn't matter to these people.
Yeah, you're like a completely new person, and people don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And then I hate being that mom too, who's like, all I talk about is my kids.
Yeah.
Because I know then there's that whole, you know, like, you need to have a life outside of your kids and be your own person. I'm like, I get that, but also like, I just want to
are my life. Yes.
We're in a season of life forever.
Yeah.
Yes, forever.
Well, and I'm just so glad both of you have just the same amount of interest in sharing and are just like willing to hop on board with all this. Like, I think it'll be great for our accountability too of creating. But yeah, the fact that both of you are willing to come together, like, you know, haven't really met till this podcast, but like we're all able to just, you know, share openly. And I love that. Maybe that's how other people will feel listening to us. Like, it doesn't have to be your, you know, lifelong best friend. Like, you can share openly with any mom.
Yeah, this was great. This is going to be so great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, I don't know how we like sign off each one.
I know. You know how like every podcast, they all have like a saying at the end of their podcast?
Do people have a saying at the end?
My husband listens to so many. It's so ridiculous, but they all have like some sort of like see you later, or I don't know. Like,
should we like incorporate journey into
aloha or something? Like they all say something at the end to like
until next time.
Yeah. Let the journey continue.
Yeah, let's do that.
The next stop on our journey
is
birth story. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Something like that. We'll
work
figure
on
it
it.
out.
We'll work on it.
You know, maybe a little wave, guys. See you next time.